lay out exactly how this American build-up has happened and what they have in the region now?
Sure. So this, Ed, is mostly an air and naval build-up, which we can see here on this map. It's not substantial ground forces. And the centerpiece is really a pair of aircraft carrier strike groups. And a strike group, as you know, is the aircraft carrier itself. It's the air wing, and it's all the escort ships around it that have air defense capacity, that have weapons of their own. There is one aircraft carrier strike group nearby in the Gulf of Oman. There is another one that's been making its way into the region. It's somewhere in the Mediterranean. We don't know exactly where it is. That's a USS Gerald Ford. That's probably also within striking distance of Iran, given it can be refueled. And then there are a huge numbers of aircraft, so F-35, various others. The really striking one that I noticed in the last 24 hours, 48 hours or so, is F-22s. And as you may know, the F-22s are America's most advanced fighter jet. They have landed in Israel. That's very, very unusual. We don't normally see them there. They are very capable aircraft. And all of this is now spread across a number of bases. Some countries, Saudi Arabians, the Emiratis, have said they will not allow their air bases, their ports, to be used as staging grounds for attacks, although inevitably they are caught up in this. And so a lot of the force build-up is in places like Jordan, Bahrain, some of it in Israel, but a vast bit of it is simply floating on aircraft carriers.
And how does that force compare with previous build-ups we've had over the years?
Not as big as you might think. It's very big in absolute terms, 2 aircraft carrier strike groups, more than 100 fighter jets. There is enough here to start a war with Iran with little or no notice, don't get me wrong. But if you look at this chart, what you see very clearly is this is much, much smaller than, say, the 5 aircraft carrier strike groups that were in the region for the second Gulf War in 2003. It is even smaller than the campaign, the number of forces that were there for the strike campaign against Iraq in 1998. And the key thing here, Ed, is that there are no big visible special operations forces of the kind we saw in the Caribbean prior to the Maduro raid. There are no substantial marine amphibious forces that we see. And this is enough for a big strike campaign. It's not enough for months and months of strikes, though we must factor in, of course, the Israeli Air Force in all of this, which I think would be pretty likely to get involved if a conflict were to begin.
I want to understand what the aims of this war could plausibly be. And I think there's a first question here, Shashank, which is, does it matter? Why is it important to have war aims? What happens if you don't?
How do you know when you stop? There's a famous quote, is it David Petraeus, who said, "Tell me how this ends." And if you don't know why you started, you don't know how to end. If the aim is to topple the regime, that is as I think Nick has already made very clear, if it indeed achievable, a long, protracted, open-ended campaign that could see you there for weeks or months. Whereas if the aim is simply to punish Iran for its killing of protesters, which was, of course, the reason originally why Donald Trump was pulled into this issue, his public threats to do something, that's achievable with a single set of strikes. You don't need to wait for the regime to do something or give in. There's no coercive element. And so if, I think as we're sort of discussing, the aim is to do something that gets you to a nuclear deal, that punishes Iran enough to force them to the table to say, we give in, we are now willing to make the concessions Greg's talking about, like zero uranium enrichment, that's a different middle path that says perhaps you have to do enough damage, impose enough cost, but you don't have to keep doing it until the regime is gone. You can pull back, try to then talk to the remainder of the regime, whether that's with or without the supreme leader. If you don't know what you're trying to achieve, how do you know which of those approaches you take? That's why the war aim is at the very heart of this, isn't it?
Yeah, I see. Okay. But let's go through the kind of things that Trump has said, and he said lots of things, starting with protecting protesters. But let's
that was years ago in the standard of Trump
ancient, and nobody's more able than Trump, I think, to sort of contradict himself or change course midway. The latest, I think, statement came in the State of the Union address, and he spoke briefly, surprisingly briefly, actually, given the size of the forces, but he spoke briefly to the subject of Iran. Let's hear that.
They were warned to make no future attempts to rebuild their weapons program, and in particular, nuclear weapons. Yet they continue. They're starting it all over. We wiped it out, and they want to start all over again. And are at this moment, again, pursuing their sinister ambitions. We are in negotiations with them. They want to make a deal, but we haven't heard those secret words. We will never have a nuclear weapon. My preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy. But one thing is certain, I will never allow the world's #1 sponsor of terror, which they are by far, to have a nuclear weapon. Can't let that happen.
Okay, Greg, it sounds clear enough. Is that an easy thing to accomplish?
You will be shocked to hear the answer is no. It's not as easy as Donald Trump makes it out to be. I don't think, he mentions these secret words that he wants to hear Iran say that we will never build a nuclear weapon. That's not actually, I think, America's objective in these negotiations. Iran has said those words many, many times before. Everyone from the supreme leader on down insists that Iran is not seeking to build a nuclear weapon. Those words were in the preface to the JCPOA, the 2015 nuclear deal. So if that's all Trump wants to hear, then it's very easy. But that's not actually all that America wants. I think there are two big questions in trying to negotiate any kind of a nuclear deal right now. One is, will Iran continue to be allowed to enrich uranium? And then the second is, what happens to its existing stockpile of enriched uranium, some of which has been refined up to 60%, which is very, very close to weapons grade. On the first question, the American position was zero enrichment, that Iran should have no ability to enrich uranium. Iran has always insisted that that is a sovereign right, and it is not going to negotiate that away. They are willing to propose, perhaps, I think, retaining some token enrichment capacity. They might either go back to what was spelled out in the JCPOA, which was enriching uranium to about 3.5%, which is used for civilian purposes, or an even smaller ability to refine tiny amounts of uranium for medical uses, which is refined up to 20%. But again, there's a gap there in the positions. And then on the question of what to do with the existing uranium stockpile, Iran has proposed diluting some of it. You blend it down to a lower level of purity, and then shipping the other half of it out of the country to a friendly state. Russia might be a country that would be a candidate to receive Iran's uranium stockpile. But the American position seems to be that they want all of it shipped outside the country to the United States, which is going to be a non-starter for the Iranians.
That's all very well, Shashank, but does bombing Iran help you get any closer to all of that?
Well, the important thing to hear is, of course, Iran was bombed last year. Where is this uranium stockpile that Greg is talking about? It's buried under the rubble. It's not entirely accessible. The fear here is Iran could access it at a future date. And so the point here, I guess, is a recognition that despite Donald Trump's claim that he obliterated the program last year, repeated claim, it isn't obliterated. It's inaccessible, it's degraded, it's set back. But in the long run, it's a recognition of what Barack Obama was doing in his deal, which is an understanding that for long-term guarantees against Iranian weaponization, you need Iran to voluntarily make concessions, voluntarily give things up. And my gut feeling on this is that what Trump needs is not a perfect deal. It's something he can claim is better than the JCPOA, which was Barack Obama's deal. And if that involves, giving up uranium, all of that, that wouldn't be that dissimilar to the JCPOA. One of the real advantages that Trump could claim he has secured, if he can get it, is a deal that has no sunset clauses, a deal that has no expiry dates like the JCPOA. If he came away with that, then I think he could say, with some plausibility, he has got a deal that is, in that respect, stronger than what Obama was able to get.